Conscious Singles, Conscious Connections followers. Sinead here, founder of Conscious Connections, aka also Conscious Singles. I am being joined this evening by Niall Graham, men's work mentor and coach specialising in shadow work and sexuality with men. I see Niall has just joined, so I'm going to wait for him to request. We are going live to have a discussion about this. I did just accept his request, so let's see what's happening here. We just want to talk and share a little bit about why we're doing this event that we're doing, Alchemy, what's going to happen, what it's about. But really it's about why we see the need for this event and this work. So Niall, I have accepted now a few times, but this is Instagram live glitch. So let me see. Hello everybody who's joining us. So if we don't manage to get Niall on this round, we will try again and go live in another minute or two on a different stream, but hopefully he's going to be able to join this one. I am accepting it again and again. But let's see now. So yeah, we're going to do a Q&A. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen, what to expect. Brilliant. Hello, Niall. Yay.
Hello. Sorry, I was out of coverage, so I'm going to move around a little bit.
Okay,
but
perfect.
I am here.
It's a win already, just that we're both on Instagram live. This is a celebration.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great. So, are you comfortable and set up?
Yeah, I'm set up as I can be.
Great. Yeah, I prepare myself a cacao to come on, the medicine of the heart, because I feel that this is such a big part of what we're doing, this, dropping into healing. I think I want to really open with that, you know, for me, that's what this container is about. It's about doing something healing. And of course, like getting together and the other work that we're doing, there is healing that's happening, but this is very much like the focus is on the ceremony that we're creating in the afternoon that we're coming together.
Yeah. And I guess it's recognizing that in our individual work that we both recognize the need for this work. And like they talk about the idea of the 1,000-year war between men and women. And so like just recognizing also the two parts for me is the magnitude of this work and also the potential healing of this work. It's like something that has a certain amount of gravitas also has a certain amount of gold on the other side, and that's why I'm both like nervous and excited about doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in your work you come across these wounds all the time in terms of relationship between men and women.
For sure. And like I was reflecting on this before we came on, because you know, we're holding events, True Conscious Connections, all of the events so far have been open to, you know, men and women. And especially with the singles events, like people are coming because they want to give and receive love. They want to drop into a relationship. And then I think it's from holding those spaces and seeing what's needed and the conversations that we've had that I'm like, something else needs to happen, some foundational work, because we're giving tools around conscious relating and we're, you know, hopefully in the other events imparting something that people can use, but there's just a much, much deeper piece of the lack of trust in the other, the opposite sex, the wounding, the pain, the previous relationships that didn't go well. And like, we're adults just carrying around, you know, a lifetime of this pain. And it's more than that as well, isn't it? It's like intergenerational and, you know, collective, and it's vast. And then we want to come into a space and like meet somebody, you know, at a singles event, but then all this stuff is still there and it's coming up. So this is the foundation for me. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, also recognizing that we've been sold a very Disney-like story around relationship. And I know certainly for me, the first relationship that I was truly in for a couple of years, I was like, what is all this stuff? Why is it so hard? Because I've been sold a story, like a lot of us, of the romance and the beauty and the connection and the lovemaking. And then there was all these triggers and there was all these shadows and there was all these projections. And it took me a long time to recognize that, just as you've said, like, this is deep work. And then to look at the history. Well, why is it deep work? Like, why is it so difficult for us to connect? You know, because on some level, it should be easy. And recognizing that through our history, that the feminine in both men and women was put out of society with the witch hunts, with the separation from the land. And so there was a deep divide then between men and women. And this whole idea of then patriarchy that we're living in at the moment, this idea that men are more dominant than women, or this idea that the masculine is more important than the feminine, all plays into this original wound. So when we're stepping into the relational space, we're dealing with our own individual traumas, what we've inherited from our parents, from our relational dynamic of our parents, but also, as you say, the intergenerational trauma. So when we put it into the greater context, then it starts to make sense. And ultimately, but I think for us to ignore the shadow, to ignore the wounds, then we're getting ourselves into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I kind of got most of what you said. So hopefully the people watching are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's better now.
Okay.
So yeah, will we talk a little bit about what's going to happen on the day? So we're not just, like going to be spending a whole afternoon talking about our pain. Like, yeah, that is definitely a part of it, but
Sure.
that's not
Sure.
only it. I think people,
Yeah.
people might feel daunted by that.
There's one thing I'd like to say first. Like, the event that we plan to do here is bringing men and women together to do this work, but also there's an understanding that whatever healing we do in the external world is also an internal healing. And ultimately, our relationship with the outer other, as in for me, the outer feminine or woman, is also a reflection of my inner relationship with my own feminine. So we're really talking about deep healing for ourselves here as well. We're looking at collective wounds, but also the deep impact in our own healing journey. And that's what I really learned in these spaces. Like, I've held a few of these spaces before. And when we really get to feel the wounds of the other and understand where men and women are coming from and the deep wounds that they experience, it creates more connection. So with any of this shadow work, it's like when we go through the shadow and we create spaces for it, we actually create more connection in the end. But just recognizing that our internal separation and split is also what's playing out in the world.
Yeah, completely.
Can you
And
hear me?
like, yeah, I can, yeah. That piece around, when we can hear what the wounds are of the other, it brings this compassion and understanding. And then that is where the heart can open and we can soften. And I'm no longer feeling this, wall of protection that I've built around myself, protecting myself from, the vast masculine, because I'm hearing what their experience is directly from them in a container like what we're going to be holding. And there's then a softening. This is how we, begin to let down our own walls. And yeah, recognizing, like for me, it's been to recognize that, like, what I'm carrying and those wounds, they're not about the person standing in front of me. They're not about the man.
Sure,
It's all
sure,
within me.
sure.
And they are just evoking that within me. So it's not that, it's
Yeah,
nothing to do with them. Like, that healing has to happen within me. And I think this is the power of what we have planned, which is women's circle, men's circle, and then this coming together to share. that we have the space and the safety to be together in circle with women, together in circle with men, to explore what is going on for us, and then having the other hold this very sacred space for us to share that, and then, you know, reflect back to us so that we can do this healing within ourselves.
Sure, sure. And also recognizing where we are at the moment. I think a lot of people, the last number of decades, myself included, we've spent a lot of time with our own gender. You know, we've spent a lot of women in women's circles, men in men's circles, and we've come to a certain understanding, or we've come to a certain acceptance of who we are as men and women. And I feel collectively that this work is trying to happen, and that we have built enough resource in ourselves as men and women to be able to come together and be able to hold ourselves within that. Because at the end of the day, like, a lot of us are trying to deal with these wounds in individual relationships, but the wound that has happened here is much greater than two people. So coming together in tribe, in community, and creating ritual spaces to be able to hold that is really important, because some of these wounds are so great that we can't process them on our own, you know? And it's only going to be in these ritual spaces that these wounds can actually surface, because we're being held by the other. As you're saying, us as men will be coming together, we'll be creating more of this masculine presence. And for you as women, then coming together and cultivating your own femininity. So we bring these two very powerful energies together, the power of the masculine, the power of the feminine. And by bringing them together in that way, then we have so much potential for healing. But as you say, that we're also not just dealing with the shadow and the wounds, but we're also looking, because recognizing that there's a deep want underneath the wounds and the difficulty, there's a deep want for connection. There's a deep want for love. And so that we really cultivate that space as well, that yes, it's a place where men can express their wounds and their hurts and their fears around women, because men have fears around women. And for yourselves as well to express what I would suggest as a slightly bigger wound, because of the impact of culture on women, and that men are really here to witness that, and that we step into the archetype of the protector, of the warrior. And that's what's exciting for me, is that I begin to cultivate more of my masculinity, which, as far as I'm concerned, a part of that is a protection of women, a protection of the tribe. And so that we step into these greater versions of ourselves. You want to call it the divine masculine or the divine feminine, whatever we want to call it, but that we have these sacred, like, relationships are sacred, and men and women are sacred, and we have our own gifts for each other, and that we create an environment where we can really see and step into those gifts, where women's hearts can open in the support and the protection of men. And that we as men then get to receive the love of women that we so desire, the truth of your hearts. So we're really stepping into a very powerful space with what we're doing here.
Yeah, and how that's, and so many things I want to say now. So I want,
Sorry.
I love it. When, for me, we've talked a lot about polarity before, when there is this masculine presence, the very safe, the protector, the provider, this is allowing space for the feminine to soften, you know, and this is, I feel, you know, a big part of what needs to happen, because when we have these walls of protection built around ourselves, we're like holding, you know, and it's then through the safety in like a container like this, through the connection that's happening, through the revealing of what's happening in our inner world, what our fears are, what our wounds are, hearing that from the masculine, feeling this very safe holding container, both from the masculine, from our feminine circle, from the women's circle, and from the container as a whole, we're then able to soften and like let down those walls and drop into something else. And that's just a really, really beautiful place to be. And then
Absolutely.
just on a very practical note of like how this is going to manifest in the ritual, you know, we've touched on, this isn't just us, talking about our wounds and fears and pain, but it's also sharing, our celebration and our reverence and having both, because
Yeah,
it's this polarity of the things that are difficult and the things that we're celebrating. It's both. And I really see, I've been running this mystery mini project celebrating men, and I've just been blown away by the amount of women who have been like, I want to be part of this project. What's happening? Tell me. Like,
yeah,
this just wants to happen. This
yeah,
healing, this work together, this celebration. And it's both. It's like, I feel like women want the space to be heard, but they also want to be doing the celebrating, and they want to hold that space and they want to hear. So this is really
ab-
kind of complete. It's allowing space for all of that to happen.
absolutely. And like, I think that the more that we have kind of worked in our own groups, like as men and women, it can be very easy then to start projecting onto the other. They did this, this is what the masculine did to me, or this is what the feminine did to me. And being in a space then where we really get to understand, because I did one of these circles recently, and one of the women like shared afterwards, she said, I didn't realize that men had been impacted so much as well. So we really get to see what the wound is, and recognizing that patriarchy, or our society, our culture at the moment, that we've both been deeply affected in different ways. Men have been cut off from our feminine, from our emotions, and women then have had their entire essence like shamed, being put out of society. So the more we come together to understand the wounds of the other, then we can bring that back to our relationships and say, I understand you.
Yeah.
And so that we create an allyship as opposed to an enemy. And I do think that there is still that split that's playing out in society. Men feel like criticized and judged, and women feel like, well, the masculine has caused all these problems to the feminine. And so it's like recognizing that we've both been hurt. And when we really get to see what those hurts are, that's when we can really start to, as you say, soften into an understanding. There has to be an understanding before we can move through these wounds and come to that place of love. So there's a necessity to go through the shadow a little bit, and then start speaking to the greater archetypes of the sacred union, like the sacred union between men and women, which I believe wholeheartedly. And actually, that the reason in society that men and women were split, apart from the whole feminine being eradicated from society, was the recognition whenever men and women come together consciously, that we're very, very powerful, and that women awaken men, and that men awaken women, and we bring each other deeper into the journey of self, and that relationships are sacred containers for our own growth. They're not something that we do like separate from our own growth. We can grow through relationships. And so within this container, then really seeing how we can bring what we are learning from the other back into our own relationships, how it can support our own personal relationships. And that was the thing that really hit me about what the lady shared. She was like, I really understand men more now. And that's what I really want from this container, that we understand each other. We create this allyship and say, yes, I'm really fucking hurt by you and by what has happened in society, but I also want to support you. I understand your wound. And I heard this about relationships recently, which I thought was really beautiful in terms of like personal romantic relationships, that one of the best ways that we can love each other is to understand the other person's wound.
Completely.
And when we look at this from a bigger perspective, if men can really start to understand how women were impacted over the last number of centuries, how that's still in the DNA, it's still in the field, and how men have been impacted by patriarchy, how men have been, in Ireland, I would say, disempowered, emasculated, and the impact on our lives. And we really start to understand each other as men and women better. And this is really important because it changes our viewpoint, and we can start moving into a space of connection rather than a space of othering. You did this projection.
Totally. And like, it just comes back again to the safety of a container to reveal ourselves and be vulnerable. I had the gift of sitting in on a men's circle last weekend, and we were a few women in there, and I think that we all felt deeply impacted by
Yeah.
the level of vulnerability that was showing, that the men were sharing. And it was beautiful. It was so healing, and every single woman in
Yeah.
that circle left feeling like a profound change. And that's, also the intention of us holding this afternoon. It is that this is going to impact each person individually, but also at us collectively, and then that ripples out. And this is,
Sure.
impacting change in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to speak a little bit, just before you go on, to speak a little bit around, there's also within ritual, there's a whole symbology, so much as we will be going into, just as you've mentioned before, I will be spending time with the men to really support them to prepare to meet the women, and yourself, you will be supporting women to meet the men. And we will create this like divide where we get to experience the support of our brothers and sisters, and we get to really share what's going on for us in terms of our celebration and also the way that we've been wounded. And then the symbology of the end of the ritual where we bring each other together, where we really sew back this split. We sew it back in a symbological sense or in a ritual sense. And that's the part that I'm looking forward to, that we do the work of tending to the wound, understanding each other, and then I can't say the word. We
Symbolically.
symbologically bring we symbologically weave each other back together again, and
Yeah.
tend to that split. Yeah.
Yes. And that is, the purpose of it is this fusion,
Yeah.
this alchemizing of the pain and into something beautiful.
Sure.
I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions who's with us as we kind of come to the last few minutes. If anybody has any questions about the container, or even if you're watching afterwards, you might just drop a hashtag replay into the comments, and then if you have any questions, we're going to see them. And we can answer any questions that
Yeah,
come
I'd
after.
also like this. I'd like to say to men, like speaking on behalf of myself, like it can be quite nervous. It can be a bit of a scary thing to do. And like there are men that I'm coming that I've already been working with, that are supporting me in this journey. But also just honoring that there is a fear here, and there's probably a fear for women as well. So reach out to me if you're a man and you feel like, God, this feels like really big work and I really want to be there. But just reach out to me, and if you want to have a conversation or anything as well, I'm really prepared to do that, because it's not easy work, and men have been shamed and criticized or whatever, and there's a lot of fear around women in the field from men. So, but it's also honoring both sides of us, that we have this fear, but we also have this deep conviction and want to be there, so it's about honoring both those things. And I'm sure, I don't know if you can speak to that around women, whatever fear may be coming up for you or what your reservations may be.
Yeah, in a way, I wonder if it's a little bit easier for women to step into these spaces
Yeah.
because collectively we are more accustomed to spending time in circle and being vulnerable. Like, even if we're not going to a held circle, we usually have a circle of friends / support around us, and we talk about what's happening for us in our inner world a lot more than men. And I think that is the main reason why it is easier for women to sign up for something like this. Because there is for sure the fear and the pain around, revealing ourselves and our vulnerabilities, maybe the fear around actually, naming that pain and bringing that into a space and being witnessed in that, like, that's very, very vulnerable. And I don't want to reduce that by any means. But I feel like on top of that, for men, there then is this other layer, which is that men are collectively being encouraged or encouraging themselves now to step into a more vulnerable place. Like, that is happening through the work that you're doing and other men's circles and men's work. But yeah, I think it's easier for women.
Yeah. I agree. Any
And I just think,
questions?
yeah, I think, no, I don't see any questions coming in. I just think it's really important that you know, we recognize that because as women, like, we can kind of project these expectations of men to just like show up, you know, like why aren't they just coming? But like this is it. Like this is the healing work to recognize like, you know, men are emotional creatures the same way as we are. They have just been
Yeah.
conditioned not to express that. So, you know,
Yeah.
there's a whole
Yeah.
reconditioning happening at the moment through the men's work movement. And I feel it's our job as women who are aware of that to really support that with a lot of softness, you know, and not be like
Yeah.
shaming men for being a little bit more cautious to step into a vulnerable space like this. Instead, really celebrating the ones that do feel ready and encouraging gently the ones who are on the fence.
Yeah. Beautiful. I really appreciate you saying that, you know. And for those who have already stepped up, it's like recognizing, as you say, that women, I feel, are more ready for this work. And women also need to express, they need to be witnessed by men in this pain. And so I also understand like the and I think that's where the fear comes for men is like, fuck, we know unconsciously, we know how women have been subjugated, and we know the rage that's there because we feel it in the field. So there's a fear of stepping into this and like fully being there for that, you know, whatever feelings come up, and there's a fear in that. So as you say, it's like we have been conditioned and programmed to separate ourselves from our feelings. So even coming into our own vulnerability with our own feelings is one thing, and then doing that in front of women, which we have been conditioned to, you know, not show our feelings to because women see us as weak,
Yeah.
or women won't want to be with us, then it's so difficult for men to step into that space of vulnerability. And what I really cultivate in my own work is recognizing that men have a deep presence, a deep capacity, and a deep strength. But we also have this vulnerability and intimacy. And to be a whole man is to embrace both. So we don't lose anything by being emotional. We don't lose anything by being intimate or by being vulnerable. We gain all of who we are. And that's hard to do because of this conditioning. But we become whole men in that way. So I just want to really name that as well.
Beautiful. I love it. Yeah. And I want to, you know, just say like one more time, this is also going to be an in-person
Fun.
celebration, you know. So
Yeah.
come and be celebrated too, you know, for all the beautiful things.
Yeah. I think that's really important because that's, you know, why do we end up in relationship? Because we know that there's something there. Like relationships are so difficult sometimes. Like why would we even come back?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a deep knowing and a deep love and a deep want of connection, and for men to support women and for women to love men. Like that's why we're here. And if we can do this in greater containers, I just feel like it's going to impact loads of relationships. You know, and there's a particular dynamic in Ireland as well that, you know, will come out in this circle, you know, between men and women. We have this strong mother that has really impacted a lot of young boys as well. So it's like really recognizing the cultural wounds around this as well, which is maybe different from, say, England or Spain or other countries.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay.
I think that's it. Do you have anything else you want to say before we jump off?
No, just like
Final.
really
Come on
for Ben, like,
then.
yeah, yeah. And for men, do reach out to me. Like, um, I'm really open to that. And yeah, I look forward to everyone's coming. Like, we have quite a lot of people now. It's
Yeah.
nearly 20 people already signed up.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah, I meant to have a look before we jumped on to see, but anyway, there's a few tickets left for both women and men. Your sound is gone. There we go, we're back.
go on ahead.
Great.
Yeah.
So on the website, consciousconnectionsevents.com, under the events is the first one that comes up because it's next weekend. It's the 21st, which is next Saturday. It's on in Cork. People travel all the time for events. You know, the last time we were in Cork, it wasn't with one of these events, but people traveled from all over the country. So, you know, if you're up the country and you're feeling drawn, just come along. It's a beautiful space, gorgeous gardens. So, you know, There's also a bit of a, you can arrive a little bit early and walk in the gardens, and then we have our afternoon of ceremony. It's 2 until 6, and there'll be a little bit of time then afterwards.
Great.
Great.
I love it.
Can't
Thank
wait.
you, Sinead.
Thank you. So looking forward to it.
See you soon. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, great. See you there.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.